In the late 19th century, one figure seemed to be constantly sprinting across the American frontier. Erik August Skogsbergh lived his life at a dead sprint. He was propelled by a breathless urgency to reach as many people as possible. He was the son of a disciplined ironworker who ran a Swedish nail factory. But Skogsbergh left the family trade behind. He decided his calling wasn't selling hardware. It was preaching about the nails that pierced the cross. Skogsbergh was swept into the Lassare, or Readers' movement. This was a quiet rebellion spreading through Scandinavia. Ordinary people began meeting in barns and cottages, rejecting the cold formalism of the state church in favor of an active, lived experience. By 19, he was a leading voice in a grassroots revival sweeping through Scandinavia. He stood on pulpits made of logs, speaking to crowds of 10,000 people gathered in the frozen forests. When calls came for him to serve immigrant communities across the Atlantic, Skogsbergh resisted. He actually prayed that God would bring the journey to nothing, viewing the United States as disgusting America. He eventually yielded to the request. In 1876, a tired and dirty Skogsbergh stepped off a train in Chicago. Before he could even rest from the sea voyage, he was informed he was scheduled to preach that very night. He was too tired to prepare a formal sermon, so he chose the single word Jesus as his text. The sermon was a massive success, launching a ministry that would move at a frantic pace. On a typical Sunday, he preached a morning service, led a meeting at a dance hall by 3, raced by horse to reach a tabernacle by 5, and returned for a final evening service at 7:30. His speed earned him a new nickname, Scootsburg. His crowds began to match those of the country's leading evangelist, Dwight L. Moody. Because they shared the same message and same massive audiences, the press dubbed him the Swedish Moody. This growth led to the construction of his first tabernacle, the physical site where the Swedish Mission Covenant was officially organized in 1885. In 1884, Skogsbergh moved to a rapidly expanding Minneapolis. He arrived with a plan to build a 2,500-seat tabernacle for his congregation of immigrants. Wealthy mill owners mocked the idea. Skogsbergh ignored them and spent 3 weeks walking the streets in sub-zero weather, raising $5,000 from common laborers, coachmen, and servant maids. He insisted on a democratic design, a room 107 feet square with no pillars to block the view, ensuring every person in the crowd could see the preacher. When it was finished, the building stood for a decade as the largest assembly hall in the city. Skogsbergh expanded his work beyond the pulpit, founding a school in his living room, a weekly newspaper, and a major hospital. He was constructing a survival infrastructure for his people, building the schools and medical centers they needed to navigate life in a new nation. He founded what would become North Park University in his living room, launched Minnehala Academy, helped establish the Swedish hospital, and published a weekly newspaper. To provide his followers with a place to rest, Skogsbergh purchased land on the north shore of Lake Minnetonka for a summer retreat. Soon, hundreds of people were leaving the crowded city to gather by the water, listening to visiting teachers and sleeping shoulder to shoulder on mattresses stuffed with hay. It was a place for intense study and quiet reflection. Groups would sit for days under a simple, leafy mulberry arbor nestled between his summer house and the shoreline. The retreats became so popular, they created a logistical problem. The crowds swelled so large on weekends that the local commercial steamboats couldn't transport everyone across the bay. True to form, Skogsbergh engineered his own solution. He designed an eccentric homemade barge and a family rowboat shaped like a Viking ship. It was notoriously difficult to steer. He believed that quirky, amateur, and deeply imperfect vessels were often the ones God used to carry weary souls toward a harbor of grace. Over the next decade, those seasonal, temporary lakeside gatherings evolved. The people who found rest at the point decided to stay, putting down permanent roots. By 1901, this community officially organized itself, eventually building a permanent home known as the Fairview Park Church. His work often took him away from the city, traveling by horseback to reach the untamed western prairies. During one winter trip, he was caught in a blinding blizzard that nearly froze him to death on the trackless Minnesota plains. A faint light led him to a tiny sod house, only 10 by 12 feet, where a family of 7 lived. The father was initially hostile, threatening to throw Skogsbergh back into the snow for his beliefs. Yet Skogsbergh noticed the man's Bible sitting on a shelf, covered in a thick layer of black dust. Rather than argue theology, Skogsbergh relied on the warmth he'd inherited from his mother. He gently asked the man to take the dusty Bible down and read a passage aloud. The simple act broke the tension. The homeowner softened, falling to his knees on the cold earth floor in a moment of personal realization. Years later, Skogsbergh would reflect on this family, wondering if the massive tabernacles were only meaningful because they reached the individuals hidden in the snowstorm. Eventually, Skogsbergh's frantic and breathless pace finally began to slow. When he passed away in 1939, his final message to his community was simply that he had, at last, rested his head on God's pillow. As Fairview Park Church celebrates its 125th anniversary, it stands as a living vessel, still carrying forward the fire that a relentless immigrant kindled over a century ago.